Proclamations of Martial Law, Marcos Martial Law, Never Again by Raissa Robles. Part 1, Background of the author. Raissa Robles, author of the best-selling book, Marcos Martial Law, Never Again. A brief history of a torture and atrocity under the new society. It won 2017 the Philippine National Book Awards for Nonfiction Prose in English and was a recipient of the 2016 International Journalism and Media Awards from the International Christian Organization of the Media, ICOM, in Geneva. The book uses for the first time declassified documents from the martial law era and interviews not only the victims but also the alleged torturers as well as the other key players. Marcos Martial Law, released on April 4 at the Balay Calinaw in Quezon City. It is a brief illustrated history of the corrupt and human rights violating regime of the late former President Ferdinand Marcos. It was published 30 years after the 1986 revolution, making it timely. Attendees included engineers and social activists Roberto Obed Bersola, Rene Saguisa, Pete Lacaba, Director Bonifacio Ilagan, and Ateneo School of Government Dean Ronald Mendoza. Bersola, Lacaba, and Ilagan discussed the torture and the detention they went through under the Marcos regime. She has interviewed 5 Philippines presidents since Marcos. She graduated from the University of the Philippines with a BA in English, magna cum laude, and later took a course at the International Institute for Journalism in Berlin. Robles is also the senior Manila correspondent for the South China Morning Post, Asia's oldest English newspaper in Hong Kong. She has written for the Economist Intelligence Unit, The Times of London, The Manila Online, BBC Radio, Asia Week Magazine, and now the defunct Riyadh Daily newspaper. She has also been interviewed by the Voice of America and National Public Radio. She covers business and political news and has reported on the Mindanao Rebel conflict, peace talks, Islamic radicalism, and Beijing-Manila relations. She enrolled in a journalism in Berlin after receiving a bachelor's degree in English from the University of the Philippines. Part 2, Historical Background of the document. Martial law in the Philippines refers to the things that happened in the past in which the Philippine head of state placed all part of the country under military control during the administration of President Ferdinand Marcos. Under the current Constitution of the Philippines, the President as head of state and Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces may declare martial law for the reason of invasion or rebellion for the public safety. As far as everyone knows, some places use a different legal construct like state of emergency. Martial law includes curfews, the suspension of civil law, civil rights, habeas corpus, and the application or extension of military law or military justice to civilians. On September 22, 1972, President Ferdinand Marcos imposed martial law through Proclamation 1081, claiming the government was in mortal danger of being overthrown by a widespread communist conspiracy and armed rebellion. Marcos gave himself emergency powers that put the military and the police at his personal beck and call. Proclamation 1081 is a significant historical event in the Philippines that refers to the proclamation issued by former Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos on September 21, 1972, which declared martial law throughout the country. Under martial law, the Marcos regime intensified its crackdown on political opponents and activists. Thousands of people were arrested, tortured, and killed, and media outlets were heavily censored. The military also conducted raids on universities and other institutions that were seen as promoting dissent. The end of martial law was marked by widespread protests and the election of new President Corazon Aquino in 1986. Under martial law, the Marcos regime intensified its crackdown on political opponents and activists. Thousands of people were arrested, tortured, and killed, and media outlets were heavily censored. The military also conducted raids on universities and other institutions that were seen as promoting dissent. The end of martial law was marked by the widespread protests and the election of a new president, Corazon Aquino, in 1986. The title of Ms. Raissa Robles' book was Marcos Martial Law, Never Again, which it contains 7 chapters that the history of human rights violation committed during the late strongman's authoritarian rule. Also, she shows and explains why Mr. President Marcos declared martial law. During the book launch on Tuesday, February 23, she also said that the book targets to remind Filipinos of people who's already forgotten what happened and to uncover more stories of cruelty in Marcos' reign. There's also a young woman who had been raped and treated as a comfort woman, which means rape, forced by sex, and unwillingly physical touch by a military officer by that time. Robles was very shocked that she ends up crying when she realized how cruel this law doing to her fellow Filipino citizen. We never knew the extent of repression. She said that anyone who reads the book will know a benevolent dictatorship, and take the book also aims as a warning about the cost of giving up one's freedom, utmost freedom of your own citizen, own country, and own pace of life. Today, the period of martial law under Proclamation 1081 is remembered as a dark chapter in Philippine history, and its legacy continues to be felt in country's politics and society. Part 3. Content and contextual analysis of the important historical information found in the document. The book was published during a time when the Philippines was at its darkest time, and publishing any materials against the government has very serious consequences. The author talked about the horrifying experiences of our kababayan when the martial law declared by Ferdinand Marcos. On this era, she showed us the nightmares of people in our country day and night. Martial law has historically been implemented through the armed forces of the Philippines and its predecessor bodies, serving as the head of state's primary tool for implementing political power in a reversal of normal practice of civilian control of the military. From the man who fell from the sky in Antipolo with 33 counts of shallow wounds until the time when the murder of Senator Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr., August 21, 1983, who was shot from behind while being escorted of an aircraft by government agents, Aquino was mentioned as a political threat to Marcos. In September 1972, Marcos declared martial law, claiming that it was the last defense against the rising disorder caused by increasingly violent student demonstrations, the alleged threats of communist insurgency by the New Communist Party of the Philippines, CPP, and the Muslim separatist movement of the Moro National Liberation Front, MNLF. One of his first actions was to arrest opposition's politicians in Congress and the Constitutional Convention. Initial public reaction to martial law was mostly favorable except in Muslim areas of the South, where a separatist rebellion led by the MNLF broke out in 1973. Despite half-hearted attempts to negotiate a ceasefire, the rebellion continued to claim thousands of military and civilian casualties. Communist insurgency expanded with the recreation of National Democratic Front, NDF, an organization embracing CCP and the other communist groups. The unbearable suffering and losing of justice for all the crimes that had happened, millions of ordinary citizens decided to fight for those who died and suffered and to redeem our rights. Part 4. Contribution and relevance of the document. This book provides an overview of what happened during martial law, not just what happened but also how it affects everyone. During martial law, there is a simple chain of command and centralized decision-making. Since it's under military rule, people tend to be more disciplined, which leads to less number of crimes. In the beginning, martial law was very effective. But then, abuse and power turned all over. This effective martial law is suppressed. This book is a study of the strongman rule that the Philippines once had, to serve as a warning that giving up our freedoms in exchange for promises of unity and prosperity will exact terrible consequences affecting many generations. It is not surprising that the author dedicates this book to all the human rights victims of Marcos dictatorship whose sacrifices we are building on today, and for the unborn generations who might be asked one day to make the same sacrifice. Implementing martial law is supposed to be a good way in terms of having a disciplined country. Unfortunately, we just suffered. Many people died, has been abused, and forgotten. The goal of martial law was to reduce crime and for us people to do what is right and be afraid of doing something illegal. Unfortunately, the good plan about martial law go out of hand, and that's why people hate Marcoses. Martial law isn't a bad idea at all. It's just that we need a leader with a conscience and a heart to make this martial law work and succeed.